I had only been in Darnell's Hollow for 2 days when I first heard the bell. It rang at exactly 3:33 a.m., not once, but 3 deep, slow chimes that seemed to vibrate through the bones of the earth. The sound woke me instantly. Not like a sudden noise, more like something pulling me from sleep. The air in my motel room was freezing. My breath fogged in front of my face, though I hadn't touched the thermostat. Everything was still. Too still. No traffic. No wind. No owls or insects. Just silence, and the fading echo of those 3 bells. The town had one church. I'd seen it earlier that day, sitting atop a wooded hill at the edge of town, a crumbling stone structure, tower leaning slightly to the left like it wanted to fall but hadn't yet decided when. Overgrown ivy strangled its windows. The cemetery behind it was barely visible through a twisted iron fence, but enough to notice that most of the gravestones had no names, only symbols. The locals didn't like to talk about the church, or the hill, or the cemetery. I'd asked the motel owner, an old man named Carson, if he knew anything about the bells. He didn't meet my eyes. "Nobody's rung those bells since 1983, he muttered. "They sealed the tower after what happened." I waited, but he said nothing else. That night, the bell rang again. Same time. Same 3 chimes. But this time, I also heard something else, a faint whisper, far off, like someone speaking underwater. Or underground. I was in Darnell's Hollow doing research for a docuseries on America's Forgotten Places. My focus was on small towns with unexplained disappearances, and Darnell's Hollow had 9 people, all vanished between 1971 and 1983. No bodies. No suspects. No trace. All were last seen near the church. The most chilling detail? All 9 victims were reported missing on the 3rd day of their stay in town. Just like me, the following morning, I hiked up the hill alone. It had rained the night before, and the dirt path was slick, half swallowed by creeping moss. The church was even more ruined up close. The wooden doors had rotted through in places, revealing nothing but darkness inside. I walked around the back and stopped cold. There, nestled among decaying gravestones, was a stone well. Wide, old, and covered with a rusted iron grate, chained tightly with a thick padlock. It wasn't on any maps I had found. No mentions in local archives. I knelt beside it. The stone was ice cold, colder than it should have been. There were runes carved into its lip, barely visible under the moss. Some kind of language I didn't recognize. My ears began to ring again. The same feeling I had the night before crept in, static in the air. Like being watched. I didn't stay long. Back at the motel, I reviewed my footage, and my heart dropped. Every video file from that morning was corrupted. Static. Black frames. Occasionally a flicker of something, a blurry hand? But nothing usable. That night, the bell rang again. This time, I was already awake. Waiting. And then I heard it. A whisper. Clearer now. Not from outside, but from under the floorboards. "He's still down here. We can't leave. Don't trust the priest." The voice sounded wrong. Like it wasn't coming from one person, but many voices layered together, trying to speak as one. I stared at the floor. It wasn't creaking, but my lamp flickered violently. And then my phone vibrated, a notification. Voice memo saved, 3:33 a.m. I hadn't recorded anything. I hit play. There was silence at first. Then static. Then my own voice. "Somebody's still down there." I didn't sleep. I couldn't. That recording. It was my voice. But I never said those words. I tried telling myself it was some kind of glitch, maybe an accidental activation. But deep down, I knew better. I didn't just hear my voice. I remembered saying it, but not in this timeline. Like a dream that hadn't happened yet. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I needed to go back to the well. I bought bolt cutters at a local hardware store. The cashier, a middle-aged woman with pale eyes and a nervous tick in her lip, stared at me a little too long. When I handed her cash, she whispered, "Don't go back up there." I didn't respond. By noon, I stood before the well again, The iron grate rusty and slick from last night's stew. My breath fogged as I crouched, the cold radiating from the stone like an open freezer. The chain came off with a snap. Beneath it, the well's darkness stared back at me, a perfect black that swallowed light. I aimed my flashlight down. The beam didn't touch the bottom. There was a ladder built into the stone lining, ancient and fragile looking, but intact. Without allowing myself to think, I swung my legs over the edge and began to climb down. The descent felt wrong. The walls were wet. The air smelled like earth, mold, and something metallic. Blood? I couldn't tell. Every few rungs, I'd hear a faint tap 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 from below, as if something else was climbing up toward me. 30 feet down, I hit ground. I was standing in a narrow, stone corridor. It wasn't natural, the walls were carved, the ceiling supported by wooden beams blackened with age. My flashlight flickered, then stabilized. Ahead, the tunnel curved sharply, disappearing into darkness. I took a step forward. And something whispered in my left ear, "You came back." Just like he did. I spun around, no one. But the air was colder now. And I could hear it, the bells again. Muffled. Distant. But coming from beneath me. I followed the corridor. The carvings on the walls grew more detailed. Twisting symbols. Human figures bowing before something massive, faceless, with too many limbs. My skin crawled. At some point, I noticed my flashlight wasn't casting shadows anymore. Then I reached the room. A small, circular chamber, maybe 10 feet wide. In the center was a stone pedestal. And on it, a book, thick, bound in cracked leather, pulsing faintly with green light. I approached, slowly. The book hummed, as if aware. As I reached out, a hand grabbed my wrist. It was freezing cold, with long fingers and skin like dried bark. I looked up into nothing. A shape stood in front of me, humanoid, but blurred, like my eyes couldn't focus on it. It leaned close, and though it had no mouth, I heard its voice clearly, inside my skull. "You opened the gate. Now you must listen." My vision blurred. The room melted. I saw flashes, of people being dragged down the well, screaming, clawing at the stone. Of a man in priest robes, chanting at the edge of the pit. Of a girl's voice crying, "He promised we'd be safe." And then I saw myself, kneeling at the pedestal, chanting words I didn't know, as the walls bled shadows. The thing released me. I stumbled back. The book was open now. The page read. Chapter 9, The Final Return of the Marked One. I have no idea how I got out. The next thing I remember, I was lying in my motel bed, my clothes soaked, boots muddy. The chain was back on the well. The video on my camera? Gone. Erased. But the mark on my arm, a small spiral, darkened ink black, was new. And last night, the bell rang again. This time, 4 chimes. Something's coming. And I think I brought it with me.